So we have been looking forward to this day. I know we've been preparing and planning for our goal setting, but I actually think everything happens for a reason. Paul, I know you agree with that. How better to start our school year off, our new year, I should say, not our school year, but our new year off, heading back into school with all the challenges that we face and trying to reset with goal setting. So I'm really excited to learn from you, to be your partner today. And I'm Jeanette Simonson. Many of you have been here before in a webinar fashion, coming to you from Thrively in beautiful sunny Colorado here. We don't have quite the low temps that you guys in the Midwest do, but really happy to introduce our leader and somebody who's going to take us through goal setting today. And without further ado, I'm going to let Paul introduce herself and take it away, and I'll be here to support. So please feel free to chat and share where you're from. Tell us a little bit about you so that we can personalize this as well.
Thank you, Jeanette. And I'm so glad to be working with you and partnering with you for this webinar. I'd like to welcome former colleagues, new colleagues. It's not easy to speak in front of expert teachers, educators, but being the passionate educator that I am, I take joy when it comes to speaking about children, teaching, and learning. In an email I sent to some of my contacts, there was an error with the title of my email. Instead of goal, I mistakenly wrote the word goad, slip of the pen. So the definition of goad reads to provoke or annoy someone so as to stimulate some action or reaction. My intent was not to provoke or annoy, but I do like the part that says to stimulate some action and reaction. So hopefully today's session will motivate you to act, react, and give feedback. Thank you.
Oh, I love that.
Let me move my slide. So I'm Paul Marie Ibrahimi, and I describe myself as an educator, learning strategist, and a creator of learning environments for children with learning differences. And I wanted to mention that, as you can, let me look at my notes, but I wanted to mention some things about who I am. As you can see from the initial slide of my presentation, I have chosen the sun. The sun rising is a symbol to me of the relationship between a teacher and a student, where each illuminates the other. The sun is the beginning of a new day, spreading warmth, light, and elevating knowledge. Things to know about me, and I shouldn't say too much about how many years I've been in the field, but I wanted to be a teacher since I was 7, and I have been in the field for over 40 years. But remember, I started at the age of 7. Education is my avocation. I am a child advocate, love talking to and about students, and also about teaching and learning, for sure. So in the chat, we would love to know something about you. If you can share 3 things that you could tell us about yourself. If you wanted to know about someone else, share 3 things that you would ask that person. So I think Jeanette is going to post that in the chat. We'd love to hear from you.
What I love that you're doing, Paul, and all of us out here who have been in Thrively world, trying to teach with the center being the student, is really that self-awareness. You started off and you had an image. So everybody think about that too, the images that you have that ground you, the things that you first tell somebody new that you've met. What are 3 things that you tell today, but would they change in a month. I think that's so interesting. And also what you want someone else to share. I wonder if you all have had an opportunity to share that with colleagues. So these are just a couple of things to take back if you're doing professional development and you're leading it, or you're an administrator out there, really making sure that we are taking time to get to know each other. Because right now I know I lean into my team more than I ever have before. But yeah, Katie, you're right. Like lately, how have you been feeling? Overwhelmed? It's changed, right? So thanks, Paul. This is great.
And Susan wrote, I am an educator who is struggling. Well, hopefully we can help you through this. I think we're all struggling at some point, at some level. Love learning, right?
Yeah, Edie, I agree. While working from home, right? I've been a teacher 16 years as well, and you're around so many people on a daily basis. But when you're isolated, what do you do to make yourself not feel so isolated? Joining these webinars, right? Being able to, that's why I wanted to give you guys the ability to talk to, right? Absolutely. What brings you alive? Paul, that's a great question. What brings you alive? Are you doing it enough during the day? Excellent. Thank you. Wyoming K-2 tutor reading and math district is shifting to standards-based. Yep, a lot of people doing that. Wonderful. Thank you for sharing, everybody. I really appreciate it. And I'll just kind of bookmark this as we move on. 3 things that I tell others about myself is, number 1, teacher-centered and focused. I'm really, really hoping to elevate our profession and our voice out there. And when we get to do that, we get to do that for students. It really kind of moves the needle. And I know I've actually recently had a student of mine reach out on LinkedIn who's now graduated, sharing all of the strengths approaches that I've always believed in for many years. So this is great. So I can't wait to hear about the big ideas.
Okay, so goals, are they just big ideas or are they real ideas? And I found with my students that setting goals became very much more important in my instruction in our learning environment. But I also feel that before we can even move to goals, it's so important for children to know who they are. And so this quote from Socrates really resonates with me. It says that true wisdom is knowing what you do not know, and to know thyself is the beginning of wisdom. So what is a goal? And I know we all have our own definition, but the technical definition is a goal is the end toward which effort is directed. I also feel that goals are about dreams, aspirations, interests, and wants. Goals are specific and action-oriented. Goals are process-based and not just about outcomes. And research shows that goals can get you to work harder, focus more, and perform better. Research also shows that people who create goals for themselves are more successful. And there are different types of goals, personal, based on strengths. I wanted to add also social and emotional, because right now with what we're dealing with in our schools, that's a very big part of helping students to navigate their studies. Goals can be about learning, enhancing strength, supporting a challenge. It could be about career, post-secondary, short-term goals, or long-term goals. And there are many more that I didn't include on the list. So in the chat, we would love to hear you sharing your thoughts on how goals should be developed. Who makes the decision? How should the conversation be framed to promote agency? You would take a few seconds to share that. We would love to hear from you.
And in our chat, Paul, Katie, thank you for sharing. You're right, it's difficult to set goals as an adult. And I guess the question is why? It might have to do with something, one of these questions that you just posed. And right, like Mariana's saying, for students, should the goals be set by the teacher? should we, I mean, if I were to go downstairs and ask my fourth grader to set a goal early in life, I feel like, and it might be a silly one, like, be able to, throw this ball 100 yards or what, that's what it is, 50 yards, right? But isn't that the practice we're looking to have our students do? And really, honestly, to achieve it, right? So you asked some great questions here, Paul. Who makes the decision? And how should the conversation be framed to promote agency? So am I setting a goal that I know I can achieve? Even, I know we're taught to like aim higher, right? But sometimes I think if we just like today for dinner, I'm going to eat a salad. Like, okay, good. I'm going to not order. We're going to get ribs for my son's birthday. I'm not going to order the like stuff I really want. I'm going to order a salad because my goal is, right? So those little bitty goals. She likes to have her students, hi, Allison, set goals considering their strengths. Yes, yes.
Yes.
So awesome.
And I love the one about ask yourself, where do you struggle?
Mhm.
I jumped too quickly, but anyway, that one, to actually have that conversation with the child, to involve the child, to have a dialogue, that's crucial.
Mm-hmm.
So we know did you want to share any more?
No, I think I'm reading through some of and obviously everyone else has, but these are really good thoughts in terms of how you do it. I wonder if anybody has any resources out there. Please use the chat feature to share any resources that you use. I know, we used to a long time ago in Chicago public schools have these SMART goals that kids would fill out, and it would almost be like just fill in a word or a phrase, right? So it was really prompt oriented. But again, it's that practice of why am I setting a goal? How do I do it? What's important to me?
Yes. It's also important to make a plan. So there are steps to it, having the child choose a goal, making a plan. And I think under that column, what stands out to me the most is having children realize that they have resources, even to decide on the people who can help them. And when I did an honors year-long seminar with my students, it was like, a revelation to them that I would say, look around your community. Who can you go to in your project, in your research, that have the expertise that can help guide you? So some of them would interview experts in the field and include it in their portfolio and in their presentation. And it became real life. Set a timeline. With our students, especially children with learning differences, time management sometimes is often a challenge for them. And in actually using these steps, it helps students monitor what they were doing and giving themselves deadlines. And if they didn't reach it, we would reset it and discuss what were the obstacles, the hindrances that stop them from achieving that step. And for them to determine the amount of time that they need and set a date. Follow the plan, begin the steps for reaching your goal. Keep a record of your progress. And I'll share some documents that could help with that. Evaluate progress, decide whether your goal has been met, needs to be continued, or needs to be revised. So when I did a year-long honors seminar, at times children like midway just realize this isn't working. I need to rethink this. I need to choose a different avenue. And it was okay, but they were in charge. And the step 6 was very important. For everything that they pursued or investigated, they shared reflections and they shared it with their classmates. So again, first things first, knowing who you are as a learner, the self. What are, their social self, their self-concept, their self-knowledge, and so on. It's important for them to develop this agency and know how to navigate. It's important for them to build a fuller understanding of themselves and learn how to apply their strengths, interests, and aspirations in charting a path. Also engaging in meaningful work. That's our job, to connect the world beyond the school walls and know their own rich potential. The critical step in developing a whole child or personalized learning environment is attaining a rich understanding of the student's strengths. And it's not only the student learning their strengths, it's important for the teacher to do that. And there are tools. And I can't say enough about Thrively, how it has helped us to use tools that help to help children develop a rich understanding of themselves. And I hope we'll have time that we can show maybe some of the tools that are available. It's important to provide tools needed to gain insight to their individual strengths, interests, learning preferences, and skills. Self-knowledge equips students to become their own greatest advocates. And I saw that as a director of learning resources. I kept in touch a lot with kids. I was in the classrooms a lot, and they felt so comfortable from the program that we provided that they could walk in my office and advocate and say, Mrs. E, I'm not getting this. How can I approach my teacher so that she can understand how I learn? So those are, that's one example of a conversation that I had with students. Rather than to default to a deficit model, we need a strength-based approach where we identify opportunities for students to grow and deepen their skills. This equates to a student approach. So there are a myriad of tools that can be used to enhance learner agency and advocacy. And these are some of the ones that I've used, but the one that we started relying on most was the strengths assessment provided by Thrively. Thrively became a one-stop shop for me because it incorporated everything that we did with our Minds On, Hands On, Hearts On program, where we looked at skills, we looked at the social and emotional side, children developed portfolios, but Thrively became a one-stop shop where everything was there, where children could go back to it and where they could see progress over time. We've also used the multiple intelligence inventory, the habits of mind assessment, and the other ones are some that we have also used the learner sketch from the All Kinds of Minds model, the school motivation and learning strategies inventory, and also the learning preference inventories. And there are many out there. So whenever, Jeanette, you feel it's appropriate to share an example of what the platform offers, you're welcome to do that.
Wonderful. Yes, thank you so much. I'm gonna jump in real quick here and share. And I know I see a lot of familiar names and many of you guys know this platform really well, but the number one thing, thinking about strengths, and you mentioned that, if I go into my class and I look and I see, again, I look at what you get from knowing your students and them knowing themselves, those top strengths with the idea of who they are. And again, like Allison was saying, take these strengths and then say, what is my goal around this? I want to use my analytical strength to be able to, or I want to use my flexibility to be able to influence others. And so you're building that into, and it can even be from a team perspective, right? So if you're putting kids in teams, they can sit down, learn about each other. Again, many of you have seen me send out, the user guide where we're going to share, like I would share it with Paul and say, okay, this is who I am. These are my strengths. And she would share hers. And we'd start to figure out our goals. Like, I'm going to provide this for our team and she's going to provide that for our team so that we have a diverse thinking in here. So really wonderful opportunity to be able to dive into these strengths and go deeper into how unique we are as well. And just because we're in the platform, everyone hopefully who's here has seen that you can set your own goals. So taking those strengths and saying, okay, I'm going to create a goal for myself. I really want to work on XYZ, and you can give a template or a rubric or something like that. So thank you so much, Paul, for giving us that opportunity. We'll jump back in a second. I'm going to stop sharing and allow you to share.
Thank you. So, we know students need to acknowledge what type of learner they are and what they need in order to achieve their goals. For
And you just need
example,
to press some screen share, Paul.
oh,
You're not sharing anymore. Yeah, that's okay, because I booted you out. Sorry about that.
let me,
So just at the bottom, the green screen share, and then share again. And if for some reason it's not working, there we go. Awesome.
so as I was saying, students need to acknowledge what type of learners they are, what they need in order to achieve their goals. An example, for example, with ADHD students, they may need to evaluate carefully what kinds of goals they have, whether it's short-term or long-term, and sub-goals to reach the bigger goal. So we had to break down things and say, okay, here's the big picture, but let's work in incremental segments. I know many people have seen this picture, and I think it says so much to us. It speaks to us. For children to know their strengths, it's important that we create environments that promote that. Kids need space to gain the skills that they need. They not just accommodations. As adults, we forget how we modify our own environments all the time as adults with agency over our lives. And sometimes we take that for granted and forget kids need it just as much. So if you look at the first frame and the first image, it's assumed that everyone will benefit from the same supports. They are being treated equally. In the second image, individuals are given different supports to make it possible for them to have equal access to the game. They are being treated equitably. In the third image, all three can see the game without any support or accommodations because the cause of the inequity was addressed. The systemic barrier has been removed. And this brings to mind, and I don't know if many are familiar with Jonathan Mooney, who is a dyslexic writer who just recently wrote the book Normal Sucks. That's Jonathan. He said something that really stuck with me. He said accommodations are there to fix a broken kid, to fix a broken system and not a broken kid. Accommodations should be there for a sense of purpose and vision. Validate passion and translate it to concrete vision. So I think that's really deep, and accommodations have a place. But if we can remove the barrier, the systemic barriers will go a long way. So design of learning environments. The first frame shows a static, a one size fits all. It ignores all barriers in the curriculum and experiences of students. The learner is the receiver. In the second, you have the reactive, the accommodations. Retrofitting curriculum is based on the assessment of students' needs to circumvent barriers. So the learner self-discloses. In the third, being proactive, and when you see the words UDL, it's the Universal Design for Learning model, options and supports intentionally designed to remove barriers in the curriculum, and the learner is given choice. We are designers of learning environments when we clarify our goals and design proactively. For all of our learners, we are thinking with the UDL lens. Being proactive in our design allows the learner to choose their path and develop their understanding in a way that works for them. Providing access to outlines and video lectures can work for everyone. For example, a student who needs a guided reading strip, you see how he benefits from it, and you offer them for all kids in class. A parent requests a way for her child or his child to know what homework is due. So you start a class website where homework is posted. So it's the proactive trying to serve all and not just one. So in the chat, we'd love for you to share tools that you have helped to that you have used to help students identify their strengths and challenges? I know I listed some, but I'm sure there are so many out there, maybe some very informal, more qualitative than quantitative. We would love to hear from you.
Thank you so much. This is such a great opportunity to share out. You know, the power is in all of you and the experience. I would imagine if we had time and we could add up all the experience of everyone in this webinar, we would have a database of resources that would get us through till, you know, 2024. And so, you know, sharing out, I also put in here, you know, making sure you share, put your social media, Twitter handle, LinkedIn, whatever you'd like. I know I get so much great information from people on LinkedIn and from Twitter. So if you would like to put that in here, absolutely follow each other, because I love that you're giving them this opportunity to really kind of elevate everybody's understanding of this. Yeah, and yep, absolutely. This is the free version of the strengths test, similar to Gallup when discussing our results. Yeah, the strengths assessment is free to everybody. So just create an account like you all have done, and you can absolutely have every student take this and you know, have conversations about it. If you do want to try out the pro version, I did put a Google form in here that you can fill out, and we can certainly get you access to that. So thanks, Paul.
Excellent. Thank you. Have people written in the chat?
A couple of things.
I think.
Yeah, we have, so Heather's asking if we have some assessments for elementary. We absolutely do. We have a K-2, which is a little bit different. And then we also have one for, you know, 3rd through 12th grade. So if you have any questions about any of that, either reach out to myself and I'll put you in touch with the person who kind of helps with your region. But happy to, yeah, some, you know, some forms and other tools online. There's lots of things here, but what's really great about being able to use the strength assessment is that you can click on insights and you can see the breakdown of every student's strengths. You can click on it. It's a really useful tool to be able to navigate and make decisions from it and set your own goals. I have set so many goals just directly from the assessments that the students took.
Yeah. And for my own self, I took the self-assessment and I created my own portfolio on Thrively as well as goals for the year. So I'm going to go quickly through this because I already see we're getting close. I want to get to some of the tools that you might be able to use. So the whole point of this slide is to demystify learning. A lot of times IEPs don't always tell us. IEP break down tasks, whereas when you have a strengths assessments or learning assessments, you really start creating a student learning partnership. There's dialogue, there's discussion. Children identify their strengths and challenges, and you get to know your students. So it helps you in how you design your own lessons. So I didn't want to make a point about UDL. Teaching and learning through the UDL lens, it's a helpful framework to use in any classroom for all learners, as every student is a variable learner. And this is a lot for you to take in, but the key things I'm going to stress is that we need to look at how children access knowledge, information, how they build from the information, and how they internalize it. So there are 3 areas, and UDL says that as designers of learning, we need to provide multiple means for engagement. We also need, it's the why of learning. We need to give reason for learning. We also need to provide multiple means of representation. And I'm sure you can skim through quickly, you know, how even the language and symbols that we use, how do we help comprehension in the way we present? The third area is the how of learning. How do we provide multiple means of action and expression? And one of the things that comes to mind is a student that was very artistically talented, who actually went into acting and was featured in a film 2 years ago. And when he was in chemistry class, he was not a great reader, but his teacher thought about multiple ways of expression. And what he did was do a video of his understanding of how to create polymers. And I'm not a chemistry person, but he acted as a German professor and he took us through the whole process. And because he was able to do that, his written representation was deep and showed understanding. So what I wanted to stress is that good teaching does not have a single agreed upon definition, whereas UDL is a framework with clear principles, guidelines, and checkpoints. It's research-based design framework that begins with goal setting, anticipates variability, and uses guidelines to minimize barriers so that all students can be expert learners. The goal that we try to reach with UDL using that framework is to develop expert learners who are purposeful, motivated, resourceful, knowledgeable, strategic, and goal-directed. I know that's a lot to take in, but you'll have these that you can refer to later. So one more time, if you don't mind sharing, how you help students access, engage, and express their learning. Maybe think of one of these, in expressing what they understand from one of your lessons. Think of a student or students you teach. We'll take just 1 or 2 minutes on that.
Yeah. And if I know we were supposed to end at 5, we always go over because we stay for questions and we're happy to do that. But I've included the presentation in the chat, so please grab that before you go. There's really great resources and things you can obviously refer to back. And certainly I put my email address in there, Jeanette@thrively.com. If you have any questions, I can put you in touch with Paul as well. She is a wealth of resources and amazing, but certainly share with each other. I'm going to also throw in the chat a resource that we use here at Thrively, which is our user guide to make sure you can build that strengths-based culture.
So the next slide shows a strengths-based learning profile. So it looks again at the UDL lens, through the UDL lens. So this is something you can actually use with your students. That once they do their strengths assessment and they know what their strengths are, what their challenges are, you can have that discussion with them or have them reflect on how do they access, what's their best way of accessing based on their strengths. What are some challenges they meet, and what were they surprised to learn about themselves? What are their preferences and needs? What does this mean about the way they learn? So it's accessing, engaging, expressing, and words that describe them, and what are their 5 strengths. And the more discussion you have with students about that, the more they can self-advocate. Again, this next slide, let me see, I didn't move it. Continues from the first. They would state what their strengths or challenges are, what their preference or need, and what tools or apps and resources, learning skills and strategies to develop agency. And you could make it more student-friendly. This was more for the teacher, but it's not a bad idea to teach children that language. They do catch on. The next slide stresses that making a plan, and you ask children what stands in your way. This quote really says it: the day you put your goal in writing is the day it becomes a commitment that will change your life. Are you ready?
Love that.
What we've used in our program, we have this template that students would choose their first goal and then would continue. And it's digital, so they can write as much as they want and it would go to the next frame. So they would write their first goal. They would say why they chose the goal, how they will achieve the goal, with what strategies, and how will they track their goal on the column to the right. I made progress on my goal by taking these actions. I encountered these challenges in working on my goal, and I will continue to work toward my goal by using the following strategies. So we would have them periodically check their goals, write how they're tracking, and reflect on it. It was a very big part of our program. Are there any questions?
And you can unmute or you could put it in the chat. I also gave some resources, a little presentation that kind of talks people through creating those user guides, and it helps you to maybe start setting goals, as well as the Google form. So
Great.
thank you so much.
Thank you. So
Questions?
I want to share an example of a couple students, and we're almost done. Student A, after they would fill out and work on their goals and identify their strengths and challenges, we would want, students would write to their teachers what I want my teachers to know. A form can be used, but they actually did it on a separate sheet. So this child was strong in math and tech savvy. And I just want to share a couple of things he wrote. I am good at solving math problems, participating in labs, and paying attention in reading. I make note cards, listen, and study to do well. My dad tests me with the note cards before a test so I can get a good grade. The one that really touched me was quiet rooms will not, with no talking, help me learn better. The one that really touched me was what makes me feel stressed or broken promises, people talking behind my back, fighting and lying. When other friends are fighting, I will talk with them and get them to be friends again. I really dislike conflict. And would we know that from an IEP? No. I learn better in groups because 3 brains are better than 1. So as we planned for this student, and when he happened to end up being in my honors class, he always liked working with a partner. And I knew this about him. So I would, make sure that they were given that option. This next student, I said about herself that she thinks in colors. When I take a test, well, this is her writing, I get really nervous and say I failed even before I take the test and turn it in. Not being able to use my notes during a test or feeling pressured because of a time test also makes me nervous. I also get migraines. When this happens, I forget everything. Sometimes listening to music relaxes me, and holding stress balls help me focus. And there was one other thing that she said that stood out. I like to color code my work, and she did. I tried to, she had like a store of different colored markers. It was like unbelievable. I close my eyes and imagine what it would look like and I choose a color that I see in my head. Bright colors like yellow and green help me remember new information. Another thing that really helps me is when teachers review information using steps and keywords like first, second, third, and so on. I learn best by doing. How perceptive. I won't read the third one, but from that, and this was when she was in 7th or 8th grade, she came up with a beginning of a plan. Reading was a very big challenge for her. And she said, I will use a plan to remember things for a test. I will find ways to make boring subjects more interesting. I will read using my finger to follow along. I will look for signal words like first and next. And test taking was really created anxiety in her. And she said, I will make sure that I have enough time to finish tests. I will check the time during the test to make sure I finish. I will not worry if others finish their test before me. So,
That is so, I mean, so specific and so valuable. This is excellent. Excellent. I'll let you finish up. I know we're running a bit over. We had so much to share with all of you, but thank you for being here. If you did have to leave, the presentation is in here and we will be sharing out the recording. But I know
thank
Paul has some final things to share with us.
our ultimate goal is to foster equity. Educational equity means that each child receives what he or she needs to develop his or her full academic and social potential. And I know a lot of us will say, that can be a lot of work. But I think when we invest the time early on to review their strengths, to talk about it, to have them write about it, you get to know them so well that when you're designing lessons, it becomes like second nature to you to say, oh, I remember she likes this, she likes that, or what would help more than one person. So it's looking at the variabilities of children, but also removing barriers that will help all. So I want to thank you for letting me share this with you. And I wish we could have had more of a dialogue, but maybe next time.
Absolutely. Well, honestly, it is about sharing. It's about making sure that we all feel like we're in this together. We're working towards the same goal. And I think, elevating humanity, whatever your phrase is, maybe throw it in there. Why did we come to teaching, and stay focused on that goal, everybody, as we face the challenges that are in front of us. Those little mini wins, I think somebody said it early on, those little celebrations that we can say, today was a good day and we did something really profound and great for students, will keep you going day after day till we get through all of the challenges. So I appreciate you, Paul, for sharing this. Please reach out to each other if you want to share your Twitter handles or anything like that, and put it in the chat. I know Paul has her email address right here, and it's also at the very end of the presentation we shared. So everyone, if you want to stay on, we'll answer some questions and you can unmute. Otherwise, I want you to all have a fantastic week and go set a little goal.
And stay safe.
Absolutely.
Yes. If you
Yes.
have any questions, reach out to me. I'd be more than happy.
Absolutely. Barbara, thanks for asking. You will absolutely get an email back with a certificate that you can use for CPDUs or whatever. Yeah, I love this. Thank you, Mackie, for sharing. Understanding your students' strengths and having students understand their own strengths will automatically lead to a better learning environment. That's absolutely true. That's what we probably are all here for. And it's thank you for just reminding us, right? Keep reminding you. I go back to that thing Oprah used to say. She'd, create a dream board, and maybe there's some quotes here you learned today that you wake up and you look and you say, you know what, that's going to guide me today. And maybe you have a critical friend you lean into or a team. So thank you again, Paul, for all that you do and all that you've done for many, many years for students and for advocating for what's right. So everybody have a fabulous week. I'm going to go ahead and sign off, and we'll definitely see everybody. The next webinar, we have one next week, so please check it out. We'll have one next Tuesday, and stay tuned. We've got a new marketing director, Paul is his name as well, and he will be sending you all some wonderful information, newsletters, blogs, everything. So we're here for you. Please reach out if you need anything. And thanks so much.
Thank you, everyone.